recommendations. I'm certain it's 2:04. There we go. Waiting for our legal notification that we can start. So good afternoon.
And I'm muting everybody now too.
Thank you, Heather. I'm Sarah Basehart, and I'm the Executive Director at Independence Now, which is the Center for Independent Living that serves Prince George's and Montgomery counties. And thank you for joining us on today's IAM session. I am happy to introduce Tara Ficus, who's going to speak to us about community planning. She's a graduate student at University of Maryland's Community Planning Department and worked for Independence Now for a short period of time doing some administrative work, and came back and needed to do an internship this fall. And so, of course, we said, yes, please come and help us figure out. We have that, which we don't talk about anymore on this show, but that floating bus stop issue down our way that was the original reason I thought Tara might be interested in doing some work with us as we're sort of, battling that, continue to battle that issue in specifically in Montgomery County, but it has spread into Prince George's as well. So Tara's going to do a presentation about what community planning is, and I hope that everyone learns a lot and asks questions. The main thing I hope that everyone takes away is that you can be involved in community planning. And Tara's going to talk about that some, and then Shannon's going to pick up because I have to run off. But we want particularly advocates in the disability community to get interested in this, because if you've encountered inaccessibility in your community, it's probably because no one with a disability was involved in the planning that went on in that area. And so the only way we improve that, because we all know, unfortunately, the ADA did not resolve all of those issues, and then new ones pop up like our floating bus stops. So this is a great chance to learn about it. Tara's also been kind enough to want to take all of this information that she's learned back to her department in hopes that future students will learn about and have some understanding of why it's important to include the disability community when they're doing community planning. So I will be quiet and turn things over to Tara, who does have a PowerPoint. And then remember that you can ask questions by raising your hand if you can. If not, unmute yourself and ask the question. Heather sort of helps us to make sure that everyone's asking questions at the time when Tara can take them. And otherwise, you should stay muted so that everyone can hear the presentation. And then Shannon Minnick, the Deputy Director at Independence Now, will pick things up if help is needed with managing the chat for you, Tara, and taking questions. Thank you and welcome.
Sounds good. All right, let me share my screen first of all. All right, can you all see that? Yes, okay, perfect. All right, well, like Sarah said, I wanted to make a presentation just about community planning. It's not necessarily the most understood subject. So I'd like to just start with an overview and community planning and its objectives. Just so you have a better idea of how it affects you and your community. And then I'll kind of get into aspects of accessibility planning and planning for disability, especially when it comes to transportation. All right, so what is community planning? Essentially, community planning is the maintenance or improvement of neighborhoods to keep them equitable, accessible, and safe for residents. And community planners, generally, they create long and short-term visions. And it can really range anywhere from state level to county level to city level, anything down to basically the neighborhood block level. And their job is essentially to shape communities to be the best and most livable they can be. And on this slide, there is a picture of bus stop in Montgomery County and a picture of community planners working on a vision of a neighborhood. All right, so there are many different types of community planning. Some jurisdictions have a number of different sectors in their planning departments, and these are the most well-known, and they overlap quite a bit as well. But you have housing planners, and they do work on things like community development and creating affordable housing. And then you have, economic development planners. So any sort of strategy for economic growth, to increase economic growth in, say, a central business district would include those economic planners. And then you have environmental planners. That would include things like land use planning, natural disaster planning, urban design, and even you can get into like land use law with that. And then there's transportation planning, which is the most well-known, which, includes biking, trains, planning for bus systems, highway management, and accessibility to public transportation. All right, and then there's social planning, which is a fairly new portion or aspect of planning. And I'll go into it a little bit more after this, but that kind of includes social service planning and accessibility planning. All right, so community development and social planning, like I said, it's fairly new. It's a new approach. So planners used to really only focus on developing new housing in mostly like wealthy areas. But this new approach kind of emphasizes feedback from people, from actual residents of a neighborhood. So, planners will create plans and actually use feedback from community members versus just planning what they think a community might need. And when this profession first started, they never really consulted residents ever. And there's still a lot to be done. They certainly don't get feedback from residents as much as they probably should, but now it's much more common to include residents and citizens in the planning process. Actually, on this slide, for anyone who can't see, there is a picture of what's called a charrette. So that is a participatory planning approach where planners, city officials, residents, any other stakeholders might meet during the planning process and sort of consult all together on design and implementation. So like I said, social planning is fairly new. There's a lot to be done, but it's kind of a new approach and we're kind of moving in that direction. And I'll talk a little bit about Montgomery County planning since we're in Montgomery County. In Maryland, community planning generally takes place at the county level and at the city level. But they have a number of planners working at different levels of government. For Montgomery County, they have a county planning board. So they basically supervise county planning projects. They're not actually urban planners, but they sort of have the ability to approve or disapprove planning projects. So let's see, on here, the current initiatives, since we're talking mostly about transportation, I'll just kind of go over that. But their current initiatives include the Purple Line. They have very large plans to make a bike master plan, which is already sort of happening, you can see. And they always have plans for alternatives to car use. And Montgomery County is kind of, it's a little more progressive in that they do want to hear from residents and citizens. So they do encourage public participation at their meetings. And I actually have a link here that I could share after, but all you really need to do is just Google Montgomery County Planning Board agenda, and it would get you to the page where you can kind of look at past topics, archived meetings, and then you can kind of see what's in the future and what's coming up and what topics they'll be talking about. And you can also submit comments online if you're not able to attend the meetings. The email address is listed there below, which I can share later on if needed. All right, so now I'll kind of get into the lack of planning for those with disabilities, which is something I've learned a lot about this semester and sort of in the past, just working with independents now when I first started. But basically, community planning does have a history of excluding not only people with disabilities, any sort of minorities or low-income neighborhoods have often been excluded from their visions and their goals. And as you know, ADA has specific requirements for urban designers, but they are largely ignored, or things just aren't updated. And lots of common problems that I've learned about in the last semester would be, lack of curb ramps, lack of accessibility to buildings for those in wheelchairs, and lack of planning for service animals. And this is just a quote from the US Department of Justice. City governments may believe that their existing programs and facilities are protected by a grandfather clause from having to comply with the requirements of Title II of the ADA. Small municipalities may also believe that they are exempt from complying with Title II because of the size. So if you're seeing buildings, without ramps for wheelchairs or anything that's not compliant, that's actually, it's a false statement. It does need to be updated, and it cannot be used as an excuse for not complying with ADA standards. So I just wanted to share that, and just something I encourage everyone to complain to their local government, essentially, if you're seeing ways in which buildings or whatever it may be that aren't compliant. And I kind of wanted to show some examples of cities that consistently show up on, oh, I'm sorry, let me go over this slide first. So Planning for Disabilities, here's a quote from David Meir. The fear of not being able to navigate busy, cluttered, and visually oriented environments is a major barrier to participation in normal life. So planning is meant to make living easier for everyone, right? So the main focus of accessibility planning would be complete streets and focus on walkability. So no broken sidewalks, ramps, curbs, buffers between streets and sidewalks, and then complete accessibility to public transportation. All right, as I started to say before, I wanted to go over some cities that consistently show up on lists of places that are the most accessible, and just examples of what makes them very accessible. So Denver, Colorado is a consistent one that always comes up. So basically, all of their public transportation is wheelchair accessible. And for anyone who can't see, there are pictures here. The first is kind of a zoomed out picture of their light rail, and the second one is a closer up picture of the light rail system with a ramp for anyone in a wheelchair that can get up to the platform. So their light rail system is very accessible, and it has a 50% discount for seniors and anyone with a disability. They also have something similar to Metro Access here. It's called Access a Ride, and it has assistance 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they have a fleet of wheelchair taxis as well. And this city is one of the most walkable in the US. Their planners pay exceptional attention to curb ramps and just maintenance of sidewalks and roads. Another one that consistently shows up would be Overland Park, Kansas. So almost, I think it was 90% of their buildings are wheelchair accessible, which is kind of rare, I would say. They also have the highest employment rate in the US for people with disabilities. And this city is able to maintain almost 900 miles of sidewalks, and most are already completely accessible. For anyone that can't see, there's a picture of Overland Park, Kansas. And then they also have a website where you can report curb and sidewalk repair requests just online on their website, and you can request new sidewalks as well. I didn't actually see how quick these are able to get done, or how often the repair requests are maintained, but they do have that ability. And then the last one is Scottsdale, Arizona. So in the city, all public transportation is wheelchair accessible. They also offer a sort of similar metro access service called ADA paratransit service. So anyone who's not able to use public transportation can use this service. And then in the photos here, there's a picture of the paratransit service, as well as a new playground that they built, which is meant for children with disabilities and for disabled parents watching their kids. So like I said, those are consistently on the list for the most accessible cities in the US. So current issues in planning, just some things I wanted to go over. You may be wondering why so many projects take so much time to get done. A lot of it has to do with bureaucracy. It definitely slows things down when it comes to departmental approvals from many different departments is usually necessary. Also big projects like years and years long projects can kind of be halted by whoever's in office. So sometimes politicians can help or hinder urban planning projects just based on what they believe. So that's usually an issue in getting those projects done. There's also usually, like more of a transportation focus is generally on subway systems and bike lanes. And there's rarely a focus on bus routes and very rarely a knowledge of accessibility issues in the urban design process. So, I mean, that's an issue where I think planners can get better. And the issue, I think, is that planners think they know what accessibility looks like. For example, those floating bus stops that we're seeing pop up, especially in downtown Silver Spring, it's meant to make biking more accessible, but they completely forgot or lacked the forethought of how that would affect people with visual disabilities or people with guide dogs. So that is a huge issue in planning, which sort of affects this new generation of planners. Now I've been in my graduate program for a while now. I'm about to graduate, but I have never had a class or anything offered that taught anything about planning for disabilities. So there's virtually no curriculum on disability planning in graduate programs, not just at the University of Maryland, but I was researching and really couldn't find much of anything at any institution in the US. So, a lack of training concerning legislation or design principles related to disabilities, it's a huge problem. But like I kind of talked about before, the social planning has become a much more important aspect of planning, and this is kind of coming into graduate programs. So that's a good sign. And that includes, needs of people that have previously been ignored. But it's still kind of astounding that we don't have any sort of urban design curriculum for disability planning. But as social planning kind of becomes more important, I feel like at some point it will be included in curriculum. And like Sarah said, I do plan on at the end of the semester sort of writing a report, bring you to the last slide here, but writing a report to the program that I am in now, and just writing about the lack of accessibility planning or in our curriculum and the importance of some sort of training on this topic. So I'm hoping to just get some feedback from anyone that has any comments or anything. You can email them to me, you can just write them in the chat or say them out loud. But basically those questions would be, what are some things that you wish community planners knew now that, you hopefully know a little bit more about what they do? And then, what issues do you personally have in getting around? So that feedback would be great. You can email me or we can kind of go over some of those things now. And if you have any questions, I can answer those now. Hopefully I'll be able to answer some of them.
Hey, Tara, we have one question from the chat. Kelly asked, who is responsible for removing snow from the curb cuts?
I believe that would be Public Works, but again, that would kind of be different each level. But I believe that would be Public Works. Yes.
And Chiffon asked if Baltimore City has opportunities for people to participate in town hall meetings for planning.
Baltimore City, let's see. I can double check. I'm not too sure, but planning offices are really trying to move in that direction of getting feedback from residents, but I honestly don't know if they have that. But you can always look on their website and you should be able to find, you know, whether that's something they have.
I'm sorry, Tara. This is Bong, but I'm from MDOD. To answer Chiffon's question, yes.
They do? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Great.
Bong, do you have the link for that or the website for that so folks can just go to the website because it may be hard to find? And also, if you have snow on the sidewalk or around your building, you should call your apartment complex for like the parking lot of your building on the sidewalks, and maybe call 311 for sidewalks or the bus areas, and they can put in a complaint about that.
I can check in Baltimore City. One thing is that residents have 48 hours to clear snow. It's not a law that gets enforced much. So, you know, the chances are if your curb cuts are blocked with snow, so is your sidewalk. But it's a pretty messy process and not one that's enforced very well at all. But it's a good question.
Well, I have a question. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, you're Tara Fikes. Do you only work in Montgomery County?
I'm a graduate student, so I don't actually work anywhere at the moment. I'm just a student, but I guess like graduate work has been mostly Prince George's and Montgomery County.
Do you do any other counties like Baltimore?
Not really. I have not studied those as much as PG and Montgomery.
Well,
I have
what
a
is the
question.
website?
Francie Gilman has her hand up.
Sure. Go ahead.
Hi, Tara.
Hi.
Hi. First thing that comes to mind is we really need community planners who have disabilities. You know, that would be
Yes.
great. And I don't know how that can happen. But I was wondering, do you have suggestions, or maybe other people on the call have suggestions as to what the SILs can do to promote certification in graduate programs that includes information about designing for inclusive designing, and that without that element in their graduate programs, they would not get certification. And all grad schools need to be certified, as far as I know. Would that be a good approach?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was not able to find any schools with this in their programs at all, which I was kind of astounded by. I kind of thought that maybe University of Maryland was sort of an anomaly with, you know, not having that curriculum, but it doesn't look like really any of the schools in urban planning graduate programs have that. In terms of like getting, you know, more students in these programs with disabilities, I'm not sure, you know, how we could do that, but that's an excellent point, to bring in students that actually have that can relate to this, so that they can kind of bring it up and do projects relating to that. But yeah, it's a huge problem. And I'm hoping at the end, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just agreeing. Go ahead.
I'm hoping that after, I mean, my program is very open to new ideas, so I'm hoping that after I do submit this at the end, they will at least in the least look into getting some professors that have some knowledge about this. But
Yeah,
You know-
I think it might have to happen at the national level.
for sure, yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of an unknown profession. I mean, I just kind of fell into it, didn't even know it existed a few years ago. And yeah, I just had an interest, and yeah, I think it's just largely unknown.
Shannon, I was just thinking this might be a great presentation at the Maryland Youth Leadership Forum as you guys are working to educate our next generation of leaders. If the students knew that this is a career
Right.
option.
That's a great idea.
That is a great idea. And I think Danielle just got off the call, but I'll bring it up too.
Okay.
She has a Maryland Youth Leadership meeting in like 5 minutes, so well now.
And I know we've done some stuff with engineering. You know, like Angela Tyler from our VME program has done some engineering type programming with the students to get them interested in
Yeah.
engineering careers. But
And
this
they
is
love
definitely, and this is sounds definitely like another
Yeah.
field that we need some youth leadership to.
Yeah.
It's a
And
very,
just so-
very
and
new
just-
field
and-
too.
And I think I just lost her because everybody's name shift, but I think her name was Wendy Wiseman or Miss
Oh, Beth Wiseman.
Beth Wiseman.
Yes.
She wanted to say something.
She posted her question. Oh, she's still here. She asked about rural areas. What
rural
about planning in
areas.
rural
Oh, okay.
areas?
Yeah, so it just depends on the state. Like, I am from Iowa. I came here for graduate school, but virtually no planning exists in Iowa. Maryland is actually really good about having that profession or that field for their residents. But like rural areas in Maryland, yes, would definitely have planning departments. Just across the US, probably less than
Usually in Maryland, if
necessary.
you're in a rural area, you want to get to the county, and that's where the planning departments are for rural areas. And if you
Yeah.
have an interest in a specific part of planning, go to your local city or county website and look up that subject. In other words, sometimes they'll have housing, a Department of Housing, sometimes they'll have a Department of Roads and road work, et cetera. So sometimes you can find the hearings you're looking for by tracking down the department.
Mhm. Definitely, yeah.
May I say something, please? This is Beth Wiseman.
Just Beth.
Yes, may I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
In Baltimore County, there are a lot of rural areas. We have mobility, but it would only take you within, it only picks you up if you live within 3/4 of a mile from a bus stop. Well, the areas in Baltimore County, the northern areas, certainly don't have, they don't have, even where my sister lives in Reisterstown, Maryland, she can't use that. She needs an operation, her husband is blind, and she cannot use mobility because she lives more than 3/4 of a mile. When they made that, they didn't have the development that they have now for these rural areas. And of course, northern Baltimore County is much more rural, and does not have that service.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I mean, yeah, it's probably depending on demand.
Hey,
Of
Beth, does-
what's needed,
Well, I
but
guess the question is, there is what Baltimore County ride, does that go outside that 3/4 mile limit, Beth?
I have to read what, no, it's the mobility. It's the Maryland Department of Transportation. No, the county ride goes anywhere, but you can't get it. It's on a very limited basis, whereas mobility is 24/7.
Right.
So if you have to go to the airport or something like that, you can use that. but the Baltimore County transportation is much more limited. You have to be back, I think, by 3:30. You know,
Yeah.
they don't have them. They work office hours.
Yeah.
Chuck Kinney has his hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking like in like where design happens is in like civil engineering and like architecture and whatnot, of course. Like there's maybe there's like a some like those two combining, like combining the planning to the kind of where it gets close, where like design gets closer to meeting the ground, quote, like pardon the pun, but yeah, like how it gets implemented, like because all that stuff's of course, you know, design, and to go into the design, you yeah, I don't know, just a thought, just the like I'm I've known a few friends who've been in engineering programs, one specifically in the civil engineering in Maryland. And I don't know, it just brought up the thought to like maybe I ask him about it. Like if he had to take any classes. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the design process, it's like it's a little confusing because sometimes it's planners, sometimes planners will like ask for engineers or like architectural firms for the design and then implement whatever they think is best. But that's kind of the like another issue that I've noticed throughout my time in school is like engineers generally do the design. So planners don't actually have a lot to do with that, which is not something I knew when I started the program. I probably
Yeah.
would have maybe not done the
Yeah.
program had I known that, but yeah,
Yeah,
engineers are
maybe it's
generally-
that miscommunication or lack of
yes,
like
for
in
sure.
between those two.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue. Yeah.
Mm.
Karen?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. How are you working in the COVID era? Have you had to not be, do things like in person or like away from, with planning, you know, in other states or other counties within the COVID era?
So I'm just a student, so I'm not working necessarily for these counties, but most of the projects that I've done in school have been with Prince George's and Montgomery County. But I do know of students who have done work elsewhere in Maryland, but I'm not necessarily familiar with that county's like planning processes or what they do exactly.
So you work from home?
Yes, right now. But I'm just a student. I'm not actually doing the planning work.
So what college?
University of Maryland in
College
Baltimore.
Park?
Mhm.
Have you ever worked with Phillips programs? You ever heard of them in Laurel?
No, I've
'Cause I
not.
used to go to school there because they work around people with disabilities. You work with
Okay.
schools or
Kiyoki, sorry, we have another question. Cheryl had her hand up.
Yeah, I put it down. I'm good.
Did you have a question? Or
You
did
have
we
a
answer?
question?
No.
Oh, okay.
So anyone
Um,
else have any questions?
That's the only
Ma-
thing I would say to people who are really interested in sort of getting involved in your local planning is it's kind of it's definitely kind of like playing whack-a-mole sometimes. You really do have to go and dig around. For example, Baltimore County, if you go to their website and go to the Department of Planning, you'll discover that some of the things that the county does are under the Department of Planning. But then if you go to the Department of Housing and Community Development, you'll see that other things come up in planning over there. So you really have to kind of sleuth it all out. They don't, most every one of these agencies is required by law to get public input before they do things.
Mhm.
However, a lot of times those public hearings end up with 1 or 2 people there and the hearing's over in 5 minutes and everybody goes home. So, it's definitely, if you want to make a difference, you have to kind of dig for the information to get to who you need to get to make a difference.
Mike, is this
Mike.
something that the statewide organization could be doing? Because somebody was asking about how the SILs could help rectify some of that.
A lot of this planning that you're talking about is very local. It's city and county. There is some statewide, for example, the SILs and the SILC have testified on housing planning, the State Department of Housing and Community Development, not to be confused with some counties' departments of housing and community development. And so we've testified certainly on that. We've testified on various kinds of agencies and their services. Sometimes we go to the assembly for that. Sometimes the agency itself has to have a hearing, so we testify. So yeah, we've done some of that, but very often if you're talking about planning and accessibility and things like that, it's very local, very, very local to your local agencies and how much pressure you can put them on under in order to have an effect.
Thanks, Mike. Miriam Bessel, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, a little bit about what Mike Bowles just said is that each of the counties really, well, at least my experience in Howard County, have really valued people with disabilities coming and talking about issues and concerns. So I would, if you are passionate about a certain topic, reach out to that department, transportation, zoning, any kind of thing. And very often they will be more than receptive to even make a separate meeting for you to hear your issues and concerns. But all of these meetings are public. All of them in the last 2 years have been on Zoom, so they're very readily accessible to folks. And I've sat in on a lot of housing and transportation issues in the last 2 years as part of the Howard County Commission on Disability. And they really appreciate hearing the disability perspective. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in any of those topics to really reach out, get to know the players, and they will then reach out to you a lot of times if they have a question or concern, because they know you're interested, you're knowledgeable, you're willing to commit your energy to assist them in learning more about what your needs are, the needs of a variety of people with disabilities in the community. And just FYI, Tara, years ago, University of Maryland, through the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center, we had a program with the School of Architecture, and we did 2 full days of training on ADA and design. So you may want to, even though it's not happening now, you may want to put in your report that there has been a history at the University of Maryland to look at. And some of those issues were then incorporated into their curriculum. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a specific class, but they began focusing more on ADA and disability issues. So, that may just help strengthen your argument for including more disability-based and ADA-based information.
Yeah, if they've had someone, or if they've had that in the past, like architecture is part of this school, so that would actually make it a lot easier to hopefully bring some of that curriculum in. So thank you. I will definitely include that there.
I might also suggest that I'm sure there's people on this session that are knowledgeable and would be willing to come in and talk to students if they were interested. And I would be happy to do it as one.
Great, good to know, good to know. Yeah, that would be amazing if we could have like actual residents come in and talk about issues that they have in their neighborhood.
Any more questions?
Yeah,
France.
this is Francie again. Tara, the iSchool, the Maryland, it used to be the library school, but now it's the information science school. They're nationally recognized for working, for really doing some creative work on providing library and other services for people with disabilities.
Okay,
So I think if you look there, I'll email you
sure,
with a couple of
that would be great.
names.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Anything that has been used in the past would be great. I feel like Maryland is so like the school's so big that all the departments are separated a little bit. So that would be
Yep.
great if they've got a already contact, you know.
Yep. And thank you for doing all this. This is great. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. I hope it was informative and y'all learned something.
Excuse me, may I speak?
Yes, Jeffrey?
Yes, I missed some of this, but what type of school are what you're talking about?
This is a community planning program, a graduate program at the University of Maryland. So a lot of students, every student has different like ambitions, but a lot of students will go on to take the like APA exam to become a certified planner. And then they can be, you know, they can work for any level of government, I believe, to be an official planner.
Okay, now if I want to just go back and get my degree, is there any way I can get any assistance for that?
Oh, to get a degree in planning?
Or a degree in a different area, like say, in like management or something like that?
Jeffrey, what county do you live in? Maybe you need to contact your nearest Center for Independent Living to help you. That's not Tara's field.
Okay, I'm in Baltimore City. That's where I'm living at. So,
Well, that would be us at the Image Center.
okay. Well, who do I need to talk to then about that one-on-one then?
I'm gonna I'll send you my email address and I will link you with one of our staff.
Okay. That'd be great, because I mean, I really want to go back to school and finish up my my degree.
Awesome, Jeffrey.
And maybe y'all can help me get a job with one of the sports teams within the vicinity, Baltimore or DC.
Can't make any promises
Awesome.
there.
I know you can't make no promises. I said maybe. It's always a possibility. Oh, you know, I know. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Do anyone have any news? Anything going on? Any seminars they want to report or talk about?
I think Mike wants to talk about the job position we're hiring for, right, Mike?
Well, Cheryl has her hand up.
Cheryl Grossman, go ahead.
Cheryl Gottlieb.
Oh, Cheryl Gottlieb, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention again that People on the Go is doing their winter project stir sessions, and there's one that starts in about 15 minutes. And then the next two after that are January 13th and 15th.
Oh, thank you.
That's all I have.
Cheryl.
Sure, I'll probably get on that one. Wait, what time? 3?
3 o'clock, yeah. I've got to
Sure,
run.
I can probably get on that one too.
Michael.
Okay, we have a job opening at the Image Center for someone who can work very flexible hours over the next 3 to 6 months, providing cognitive cueing capacity for someone with significant, I guess it's called image processing difficulties. So if you have experience as a cognitive cuer, please get a hold of me. That's Mike Bullis, MBULLIS @imagemd.org, and we'll talk to you about that. I'll also send you the job announcement if you want it. So just drop me a line, drop me an email, and I'll send you the announcement. You'll also see it on Facebook soon. We're going to get it boosted a little bit to try and get it out there nationally. This is a remote job, so you could do it wherever you are. Have to have a lot of computer experience and the ability to hook up remotely to other computers and all kinds of cool stuff. So anyway, it's a good job.
Thanks, Michael. Anyone else?
Shannon, I don't know if this is the proper time, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that today is our last IM until next year. So set your calendar, mark your calendar, set your clock, set your alarm. I don't know what you do, but for January 10th will be our next IM session.
And thank you all.
Is that a Monday?
Yes, same Monday, 2 o'clock. And thank you all very much for your support over the last year and a half now that we've been doing this, almost 2 years, but thank you very much. We couldn't do it without you. Thanks for those of you who have donated funds. And if you have a few extra dollars, please don't forget to send them our way. We can't do it without your support. So thanks very much for being there with that.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I guess that brings us to the end. I want to say, please, 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 if you want to get involved, please contact your local Department of Planning by county or by city. And happy holidays. And thank you so much, Tara, for being here today and sharing that great information.
Yeah,
Thank you,
fascinating.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Happy
Thank
holidays,
you.
everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.
You
Thank
too.
you.